Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gaming News, where we discuss all things within the gaming industry. And today, we are going to separate the video into two parts, as the second video is going to talk about Activision Blizzard and more developments with the situation there. But right now, in this first video, we are going to cover EA. We are going to cover a little bit more about NFTs, and then we are finally going to end with some news regarding Sony. So, with all of that said, let us get started on the first topic. We're going to talk a little bit about EA. Now, EA has been in the news because recently FIFA and EA split from being together in an active partnership to bring all of the awesome sports games that they have been known for quite literally many, many years, and being that it's their bread and butter, and to separate from the FIFA name may or may not have really helped their reputation. Now, that's not to say that they haven't done other things that have been problematic in a variety of different ways when you're looking at the way that they treat their consumers, the way that they go about business, and try to pull the wool over people's eyes, talking about untrue statements that people had really hoped that they would come back and maybe eventually to being a really good company. Well, here's the thing. I stumbled across an article by 9to5mac.com. This is not a site that I frequent, but I came across this through another Discord server, and it's talking about Apple is in talks to buy EA Gaming, Disney, and Amazon are also potential suitors. Now, previously we have discussed the idea that because there are certain studios that are being bought up by larger conglomerates like Microsoft, like Amazon, like Sony buying all of these smaller IPs or mergers into a large company as any of those, it's weirdly not surprising to me that there would be talks about purchasing EA, given some of the games and the revenue that they have been able to generate over many years. And while they have been very anti consumer, they do certainly look attractive to larger conglomerates to invest in. So let's take a look more at this article. In this article, it states video game publisher Electronic Arts is actively seeking a potential buyer or merger. Apple has reportedly been in talks with the company about buying EA out, according to Puck. Disney and Amazon have also been in talks about purchasing the video game company. As the article progresses, the author states the idea for a buyout or merger came after Microsoft purchased Activision Blizzard for $68 billion earlier this year, and shortly after that news, Sony purchased Bungie, the studio behind Destiny, for $3.6 billion. EA spokesperson John Reisberg said the company would not comment on any rumors and speculation relating to M&A. He added, "We are proud to be operating from a position of strength and growth with a portfolio of amazing games built around powerful IPs made by incredibly talented teams and a network of more than 500 million players. We see a very bright future ahead." Now, Apple has not commented on the potential deal, and I'm assuming that the other company, Disney, has not spoken about it either. But the fact that they're in talk about this is very interesting to me because, again, business wise, the company is somewhat attractive to the larger companies that are trying to get more and more into the video game space. Now, one of the additional comments in that article is that EA seems to be in a hurry to finalize a deal. So we're probably going to get more information related to this topic, but I would imagine Apple and EA's relationship is just in talk for right now, which makes a lot of sense from the perspective of anybody looking at this from an outer situation or an outer position where they don't necessarily have all of the facts or sources. People are not necessarily in the room in the negotiation, but I imagine that even if they want to close a deal relatively quickly, it does give an impression that perhaps things are not as good as they had hoped, and maybe there's some kind of situation where they want to absolve themselves of any liabilities potentially. That is merely speculation, and please don't take my word for it, but if you're looking to finalize a deal, I'm worried that maybe they're worried that they're going to go bankrupt, and that's why they want a deal to come in, or maybe there's some kind of additional information having to do with the split of the FIFA brand, and that the EA Sports FC didn't work out as well as they had hoped, but we'll see. Anyways, there are companies like Apple, Amazon, and Disney that are looking to potentially purchase EA. Whether or not those are true is merely speculation, but Hitmarker did also report this as well. And on the 23rd, they also are talking about the studios in question that may pick up EA Sports and obviously their IPs and perhaps bring EA back to its greatness state. But if you look at the bigger scope here, according to Hitmarker, another major development in Ubisoft is rumored to be active in the marketplace, with several major players interested in taking over. Ubisoft CEO denied such ramblings in a recent company earnings call. Now, again, this is the macro picture. We're not just looking at EA is potentially going to be bought by a major company, but we're looking at other big companies too. We've talked about Bungie and them having a deal with Sony. And we've talked about Microsoft getting Activision Blizzard and Good, which we'll talk about more later. And also in here, we're looking at ESL and Faceit are now under ownership of Savvy Gaming Group following a $1.5 billion deal. We're also looking at the fact that EA recently laid off up to 100 employees following the loss of the company's license with FIFA for its popular football-based video game, which was brought forward through Kotaku. So when we talk about the larger sense here, I'm actually wondering if EA is now in real trouble because they lost the FIFA name. And they tried to spin it like everything will be fine, we will continue to be successful without FIFA. I really don't think that's true, especially if they laid off a bunch of employees, and especially since they rely so heavily on their sports franchises that it might not be going as well as they had hoped. And if they're looking for a fast sale, like in the previous article indicated the idea, I'm really starting to consider that EA might be in a lot of trouble right now financially. And if you're looking at the gaming industry, you're not just jumping on it to follow the trends by being bought out by a major company. It also means that contracts will change and people who work at those companies are going to be affected massively. So you've got to think about the greater picture here. But I'm curious to see what comes out of this, if this is successful at all, if any of these companies picks up EA, and what future EA will have as a result of it, or if it's just going to fall by the wayside, and unfortunately that means that there are a lot of people who are going to lose their jobs. Now, this Hitmarker article I received by way of the newsletter that Hitmarker has, and they did mention the idea that there's still a lot of job postings, I believe, for the company. So I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think that EA is going to be gobbled by a larger conglomerate company? Do you think that EA will be able to continue? Do you think maybe that they're in trouble as much as maybe I perceive through these articles? I'd love to know what you're thinking about it, but let me know in Discord, on Twitter, all of the places. I'd love to have a discussion with people about it. Next up, we are going to talk about NFTs. Now, it is not a topic that I generally like to discuss because I'm not exactly on the side of good for NFTs, but there is some interesting news that came out because of an NFT, and I thought I would bring it to your attention. So, we are going to take a look at the Verge article right here. OpenSea redesigns parts of its NFT store as sales continue to slump, meaning that NFTs are not actually doing as well as they had hoped, and that there's really a certain niche group of people who are really interested in the NFT market, and everybody else has, for the most part, dropped it or moved on to something other than NFTs. Now, if you're doing a rebranding such as this, and OpenSea is the largest storefront, if you will, for NFT designs, products, digital assets, whatever you would like to call them, this is what the site currently looks like. It's had a bit of an overhaul. I don't know what it used to look like, but visually, this doesn't look too bad in terms of its presentation. I don't mind it, but being redesigned, their profile and collection pages have the goal of making it easier to navigate and making the actual NFTs themselves the center of attention, meaning that maybe they were just marketing it wrong, and that is perhaps why they've been losing money. So, in an announcement post on Thursday, the company says these redesigns are just the start of the company's work to refine how its site works. They also tweeted a lot about it, and some of the overall look seems to resemble Twitter and Etsy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, considering that Twitter and Etsy are very successful websites in their own right. But it does make you wonder some things. And the collection page that shows off the groups of NFTs has also gotten a touch up. It looks a bit more modern and puts less emphasis on metrics, like how many people who own these NFTs and what the cheapest NFT in the collection is, meaning that it's trying to model more of a storefront as opposed to paying attention to the growth rate of your investment. Because my assumption is that people who are looking to get into NFTs and cryptocurrency are looking for a better way to invest. And if you're not looking at the metrics, then how are you going to know if you're going to have a good investment? It just makes sense to me that that information would be readily available. But moving away from that and focusing on which NFTs are cheapest makes me question a few things. There's a whole bunch of different NFTs apparently that you can get. And while it does look good, it comes out at a very strange time because over the last year, NFT sales have been declining, sometimes fairly quickly. Now, according to DApp Radar, OpenSea's average selling price, number of traders, and sales volume are all down since last month, though it still comfortably retains its spot as the most active marketplace in terms of dollars spent. Basically, what that means is that people have been considering the NFT market and investment and have decided over a short period of time that they're not interested in it as much as they were. So sales have been decreasing fairly quickly. But when you're looking at investments, you're looking at the rate of return over a longer period of time. In fact, sometimes the longer the term, the better. You want a stable investment, often depending on your needs as an investor. Some people will accept a lot of risk and don't mind that if you're putting your money in high and high rate of return portfolios, that you're also going to be equally losing a lot if ever the market dips, right? And in this case, you're looking over long term to make sure that in the end you're going to come out with more money than invested in. And if you're investing and you don't care about getting money back, then why are you investing? It doesn't make sense to go that route. Now, you can look at the last month, the steady decline, but if you look at ever since NFTs have become more prominent, you will see a lot of ups and downs, as you should. Now, the interesting thing about this is, of course, there are several people who are interested in NFTs, and one of those people is Seth Green. Now, Seth Green had a collection of NFTs, and his Bored Ape collection was going to star in a new NFT designed show. And I'm not really clear on what the details are about this, but unfortunately, the star of his show was stolen. IGN writes, Seth Green's new animated series is apparently in jeopardy after several of his NFTs were stolen. So he fell for a phishing scam, and he says that I bought that ape in July 2021 and have spent the last several months developing and exploiting the IP to make it into the star of this show. He said this during a Web3 conference that is known as VCon. Then days before, his name is Fred, by the way, days before he's set to make his world debut, he's literally kidnapped. And he tweeted about it. He found out who ended up purchasing the NFTs for $100,000, $200,000, and has not responded to Seth Green at all. So the mutant apes that were part of his collection were almost instantly traded for around $42,000, while his Bored Ape was purchased by this particular user for the $200,000. And this really brings forward the idea that people were fearful of to begin with. Just because you have purchased an NFT does not mean that you really truly own it, that it is digital property, that people can take it from you, can steal it from you. And what's even more interesting is that even if Seth Green tries to take it to court, he's going to struggle because there is no real way to regulate or moderate this kind of speculative investment. And what's more interesting is, while I can get behind the idea if he decides to go to court, which he has said, that the only thing he might be able to ask for as a remedy would be monetary loss from the person who stole it, not the person who purchased it. So I don't believe that the person who purchased the Bored Ape for $200,000 is really at fault here. He might not have known that that was stolen property. If anything, Seth Green would be going after the scam artist, really. But again, there's not necessarily legal precedent here. We're talking about an NFT. It's non-fungible. It's not supposed to be returnable. Like, it's not supposed to be something tangible that you would be able to get back if something like this were to happen. So I'm very curious to see where this goes. But I'm very curious to know also what any of you think about this situation. Do you think that Seth Green would be able to get his property, quote unquote, back? Or do you think he has any kind of legal recourse here? Or just generally, what are your thoughts related to this particular topic? Because while I am interested in this idea, I don't know that it's really going to work out for him in the end. And I'm just very interested to see where people stand on this particular topic. Next up, I would like to talk about Sony. Sony is in the news for a couple of different reasons, and the first is that they are making some changes that have garnered a little bit of backlash. So let's talk about this. Paul Tassi wrote an article stating that Sony is reportedly making players pay back PlayStation Plus discounts under the new system. My understanding is that they released a new tiered system for their PlayStation Plus memberships. Some people who had PlayStation memberships before got those at a discount. And unfortunately, the discount obviously is not the same price as the new tiers that they have unveiled. So, let's take a look at this before we get to the update. Sony's grand revamp of PlayStation Plus into 3 different tiers has always been a bit convoluted, but now things are getting even more complicated and strange as the service rolls out across the world. Many players have stacked PlayStation Plus subscriptions over the years, usually at a discount, but now under the new system, players in Asia, where the new service is live, are finding that Sony is telling them they will have to pay back the difference between the discounted price and the current price in order to transition to some tiers of the new one. So this was obviously reported by Resetera via VGC, and there is a statement here saying, thank you for contacting support and checking the price of your PlayStation Plus membership subscriptions. Since you purchased PlayStation Plus at a discounted price at the time of membership, there are 2 PlayStation Plus memberships that cannot enjoy other discounts. And they go forward to describe what is eligible, what isn't, and if you would have to pay back the money. Now, obviously, that was met with some serious backlash. Sony has previously published information about how current services would translate into how many months of the new services, and it appears this is where a pretty sharp gap lies, and they're not willing to let people who had paid a discount make the changeover without additional payment to reach those higher tiers. So now, Asian players are finding other quirks, like 3 generations of the same game are being counted separately to add to the grand total. Now, this sounds a little bit scummy, but it's also a question of situations where people are taking advantage of consistent discounts, and at a time where prices are drastically increasing for everything, it's not surprising that memberships to these services would also increase. Now, I do feel for the players in Asia who now are confused because Sony has not done the best of jobs explaining and finding a nice workaround to appease everyone, and it does make me question a number of things. But the thing too to consider is a lot of people are also starting to consider leaving some of these services. I read an article at one point talking about burnout of services like this where you're paying a certain amount per month to gain access to all of these games, and in the last couple of years, due to a multitude of issues between the pandemic, between some of the situations that are going on in Ukraine and whatnot, that all of these things are very much affecting the gaming industry, meaning that there are a lot of games that are consistently being pushed back and delayed, meaning that people aren't able to even upgrade their graphics card because of the chip shortages that have been happening, and the scalpers and the farmers of different video cards, even lower end ones, if they're even capable, remotely capable of being used to mine currency, then they're harder to get because the prices have all massively increased. And you're paying monthly for a service that you're expecting games to come out on, and there's less games coming out, so a bunch of people have been canceling their subscriptions. It makes sense to me that Sony would have to compensate for the loss of contributors to that subscription service to change the pricing in order to deal with all of these aspects of the market fluctuating. But then, incidentally, IGN published an article on the 26th saying PlayStation Studios is preparing to invest big in new IPs. So by the end of 2025's financial year, 50% of Sony's investment into PlayStation Studios will go toward the creation of brand new IPs. While it was previously focused on developing existing IP, pointing to a 2019 figure that saw a 77% investment in its current franchises and only 23% in new ones. Sony has been slowly shifting towards a more even split. By the end of 2022, Sony will be investing in 66% in existing IP and 34% in new IP, and by the end of 2025, it wants this number to be exactly 50-50. So this is just the latest confirmation that Sony sees great value in developing its first-party PlayStation studios, as it revealed earlier in May that it's investing a further $300 million into its developers, including God of War's Santa Monica studio or Horizon Forbidden West Guerrilla Games. Now, that is exciting because people, while they enjoy certain franchises, there is a point where enough is enough and you want to play something different. And people get invested in a variety of different video games for a variety of different reasons. And for them to change the membership tiers maybe is a reflection of being able to work on some of these new IPs. You're going to need to generate income in order to allow for this boost in their first party studios and creating and developing those new IPs. Now, yes, it could be argued that maybe investing in Bungie in order to look at movie deals and whatnot. Sony makes logical sense. They are an incredibly large company, but you still have to be able to pay for all of those IPs. You have to be able to pay for all of your workers. You have to be able to deal with the fluctuating market for different things. It is an incredibly complicated situation that I am glad that they're looking to boost their game library, certainly, and help their studios come up with new and exciting ideas. I just think that a lot of people misunderstand what is happening when prices increase, especially when it comes to something like a subscription service. So, with all of that said, let me know what you are thinking about any of the topics, whether that be about EA, whether that be about the NFT market and OpenSea, or about Sony and the new IP investment that they are looking to have balance out their game library. I'm interested to know where you stand on any of these topics. And with that said, thank you so much for being part of the Patreon. I appreciate everything that all of you do for me, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.